Hello and welcome to Kings of Fantasy Football. I am one of the co-hosts, Pablo, and here is my co-host.
Leo.
So we are here today to talk about the different league types that there is in fantasy football. So for our listeners who have little knowledge or who have been interested in getting started into fantasy football, we hope that this podcast helps you. So we're going to discuss some of the most common league types today. So we have the standard league type, we have the dynasty league type, and then we have the point per reception league type. So we're going to get started with standard. So, Leonard, you have been doing this a whole lot longer than I have. So can you tell us the most common amount of teams in a standard league type?
Yeah, so basically the standard league type are 8 teams, 10 teams, and 12 teams. That's the standard amount of teams. They can go also up to 14 or 16, but the standard is 8, 10, and 12.
All right, thank you so much. So for our listeners, so again, there's 8 teams, there's 10 teams, and there's 12 teams. So for those of you who, again, have wanted to get started, it's a matter of can you find either the 8, the 10, or the 12, which is the most common. Once you guys are able to gather the number of teams that is needed, after that, then it is deciding the league type. But we are going to discuss standard first. So standard is the, I guess, normal league type, if you want to call it that, which is 10 rushing yards or 10 receiving yards is normally equal to 1 point. And then, depending on what the commissioner says, and both me and Leo are both commissioners. So normally it is 20 yards per passing for 1 point. Now, again, for our listeners who have no idea what we're referring to, is when you draft a fantasy football team, depending on their performance on any given Sunday, will tell you how many points you get from that player. So let's just start with running back. So Leonard, if in a standard league type, my receiver has 100 receiving yards and one touchdown. How many points would that be?
That'd be 16 points. 10 for the for the for the 100 yards, and then 6 for the touchdown.
So 100 yards receiving in a standard league type and one touchdown is normally 16 points. So again, for those of you that are not in a fantasy football league, you want to draft players who you think can be consistent in their performance, but as us who do know about fantasy football all know is that it's very difficult to predict the players that are going to be consistent. If you've been doing fantasy football for years, you may think that this player is going to be consistent, but it could be totally opposite. So again, for our listeners who aren't in fantasy football yet, that is going to be one of the things that is going to be difficult for you is who do I know is going to be consistent. Now, in that same token, if you have a running back with that same amount of yardage, so 100 rushing yards and one touchdown, that would also be 16 points. Then for quarterbacks is where it can be different. So in a standard league type, it is either 20 passing yards or 25 passing yards for 1 point. So in that same example of 100 passing yards, if it is 20 yards for 1 point, that would be 5. And if it's 25, it would be 4. Now, if they also throw a touchdown, it would also be normally 6 points, or depending on the commissioner, they may reduce that to 4. Now, something that is, I don't know if it would be common. Leonard, you might be able to weigh in here better. Are bonus points in a standard league common or not common?
Normally, they're not. That all comes down to the commissioner, because that standard, is just basically straight up like points and what they do, and the amount of yardage that they do, like you were saying, in terms of throwing, catching, receiving, stuff like that. So I guess it could vary on the commissioner if you just want to increase the scoring on it, but normally you would probably tend to use that more in the PPR league setting, points per reception. So but it could vary.
All right. So Leonard says, again, he's been doing this a lot longer than I have. It's not common in standard league. Now, would you say in standard leagues, because like you said, it's just a standard amount of points for scoring, would you say the roster size would be standard in that standard format? Or would that also depend on the commissioner?
Yeah, so it could vary on the commissioner. More the main thing that differentiates the standard league between and the PPR league is just basically that you get a point per reception for every catch, which is that's not part of the standard league. So that's the main thing that differentiates the two leagues. In terms of the roster size or the people you want to start, that they tend to be like back in the day. When they first started, it was one quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense. So those were the main in a standard league how it was originally.
All right, so let's kind of segue into what you're just talking about. Is, at least for me, the last, I say 2 or 3 years, I originally started my league as a standard league, and I transitioned into point per reception league, like you mentioned. So for our listeners, that means that each time that your either receiver, your running back, your tight end, a position player, as we call it in fantasy football, if they catch the ball and they just catch it and fall on the floor, you're getting 1 point. So that over the years, to me, has become much more common, at least compared to maybe about 5-10 years. So because that is the most common, for our listeners again who have not played fantasy football yet, is you want to try and draft players who you think are going to get several receptions every time that they play on Sunday. So that being said, draft strategies from a standard to a points per reception league. Leonard, what would you say are the biggest differences in those two? You're gonna draft for standard versus you're gonna draft for a points per reception.
So in the points per reception leagues, the receivers become a little bit more valuable because obviously they're the ones getting more receptions. You want to try to get receivers that they get a lot of targets, because if they get a lot of targets, usually that means they're going to get a lot of receptions. So obviously like CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, all those, the guys that's why they get drafted really high, usually in the first round with those in that league setup. The standard, is like Derrick Henry would be an awesome a standard league player, because he's gonna get a lot of touchdowns, a lot of carries. He tends not to get no receptions, so that doesn't affect his points compared to the rest of the running backs like a Christian McCaffrey, when Austin Eckler was actually good, that he got a lot of receptions and stuff like that. So you kind of, even on the running backs, you try to get the running backs that get more receptions. They also increase in value as well. And those are the ones you want to try to target, that not only they rush, but they're an intricate part of the passing game. So that's why you want to try to focus on getting those guys as well.
All right. Now, that being said, so to our listeners, if you want to come up with a game plan to start a fantasy football league, first, can I find either 8, 10, or 12 friends, family, whoever I know to start a league? Then after that is you want to discuss, or just if your league mates don't really have a preference, make the decision. Am I going to do a standard league? Am I going to do a point per reception? Because point per reception tends to be more popular, and just generally speaking, I think that fantasy football tends to be more entertaining when you're scoring more points compared to when you're scoring less points, and point per reception tends to do that. So if you go with the point per reception route, then after that is you're going to have to start thinking about again the amount of teams, the scoring system, and then something that is going to be very important for your league to discuss, normally a discussion, is the waiver wire. So, Leonard, how do you do waiver wire in leagues that you're commissioner? And then I'll say how I do it in mine.
Sure. So in my regular leagues that that are normal, like standard or PPR, we have a continuing rolling um, system. So basically, whenever you use your waiver wire, you go to the back of the line. So after we draft, the waiver wire is established by the reverse order of the draft. Like this is when this is in your normal redraft league. So let's say we're in a 10-team league, and the 10th person that was that drafted, that will be the first person in the waiver wire. It's only fair because since the other person got to draft first, he shouldn't also be rewarded with getting the first waiver wire as well. So it kind of helps, the person drafting last, that they get they get a bone thrown to them, and they get to be the first person on the waiver wire, and then the ninth person will be the second, eighth would be the third, and so on. So let's say the first week goes by, and then there's a hot wave like last year, Puka Nakua, that he was like the hot name to pick up in week 1. So the person that's first will get the first crack at him if he uses them. Then if he does end up getting him in the waiver, then he will become the 10th person in the waiver wire list, and so on. So if that person doesn't use it, then whoever is second will get to, pick him. So you basically want to, whether you're in first, you're in last, if there's a person you want to get, you put a waiver wire claim for him. You never know. Sometimes people are sleeping on the ball, and names, players get through, and then you could pick them up. So I'm never shy of working the waiver wire. To me, that's where leagues are won. Draft is very important, but it's only a small sample of what's to come, because you have to manage the leagues. The other I'm also in a dynasty league that we'll talk about in a moment, is basically it's kind of like the NFL. So after every week, the whoever's the worst team is the one that gets to get the waiver wire first, because Dynasty tends to be a deeper league. Like in my Dynasty league, we have 37 players, and that includes individual defensive players, IDP, and so there's basically hardly anything in the waiver wire. So it's kind of tougher for someone to get better. So that so in that case, since it's so deep, our rosters, it's harder for the worst team to get better. So whoever's the worst has the worst record each week is the one that will get the first crack at the waiver wire, and then that person will go to the end of the line. Then after the week goes by, then it resets again, and whatever the standings are at that time, you could do that too. I'm in none of the leagues that have. I used to be, but not this year. Is a fab, which is a free agency. That you actually have to like auction for and you bid to get the players. So it gives in those types of leagues, it's fun. I won't say it's fun, but it's also a little nerve wracking. But it's fair for everyone. So everyone gets a set amount of money, like fantasy dollars, you could say, like $100, $100, $200, whatever, fantasy dollars, and then they will once the waiver, it's time for the waiver wire. It's like an auction. We try to bid on the player, and whoever is the one that bids the most is the one that wins the player for the week. So so it becomes a little bit of a strategy. Do you want to put a lot? So it kind of depends on how bad you need the guy, the player. So it's those are fun.
All right. So, to our listeners who may not know what waiver wire is referring to, is whether it's 8, 10, or 12 teams, you guys are going to draft players. Anyone who was not drafted on draft day, they are essentially a free agent and they will be available on the waiver wire. Like Leonard was saying in the example, is last year, Puka Nacua, unless you were very invested in his college years or just, maybe got really lucky, you may have drafted him, but most of the time, or most of the fantasy teams did not draft him. But after the first week of football, he was one of the targets for a lot of teams to pick up. And just depending on the league type, as I mentioned, is something that you want to discuss. I have it to where it's unlimited waivers in my fantasy league. Leonard was mentioning that sometimes you get fantasy dollars to get a budget for the entire fantasy season. And there are some other leagues that I have come across with some friends that they actually pay actual money. So let's say, not every fantasy league is for money, but those that are, normally there's a buy-in. So there's per team, it's X amount of dollars. And then depending on what the league agreed upon, is for every waiver wire edition, it could be $1, $2, $2, etc. So waivers is a very important subject to talk about with your league mates. So essentially, you have the number of teams, the type, the waiver wires, the scoring. That is essentially your foundation. Now, like Leonard was mentioning, and he's probably going to be a subject matter expert on this, just because I have not played this league type, but it is something that I do want to do at some point. Leonard, give us a summary of the Dynasty League type, which I've heard a lot more over the last 2 years.
Sure. So, like, if you're first starting out, like this not might be the league for you, because you're still learning, the initial strategies of fantasy. But once you get once you feel you're ready, Dynasty is like kind of to take it to the next step. There's two different types of Dynasty, which also can be called a keeper league. So I can throw that in there as another type of league there. A keeper league is just basically like you're gonna keep one or two players for the year, very very minimal players. Um, the one keeper league that I'm in. So let's say how our rules are. Whatever round you draft that player in, if you decide to keep him, then he will be it'll cost you that round next year. So you want to try to get value on those kind of keeper leagues. So for an example, like years ago when Alvin Kamara was a rookie, I drafted him in the 11th round, and as we all know, he was a stud, and so I kept on keeping him for years. The first year I kept him, he was in 11th round. And in our particular league, every if you decide to keep him another year, he moves up a year. So I kept him for several years. Then when he started having some off field issues, I let him go. But so you want to try to get like that, like value in leagues like that. Dynasty is when you're basically keeping most of your team. So in my particular case, the dynasty league that I'm in, we have it's a 10-team league. It's PPR. It's a single quarterback with multiple flexes, two running backs, two receivers, a tight end, and also has individual defensive players. So it's kind of you kind of become more of like an actual general manager since you're keeping the whole team. You have to decide, okay, which players you wanna stay with. At the end of the year, we got you have to cut some players because you're gonna draft new players. So in this particular league that I'm in, we tend to have a 7-round draft. There's a certain day that I'll set because I'm the commissioner for that. I'll set a day. Okay, look, by this day, we gotta cut our players and get down to 30. You know, so that because since we have 7 rounds, we draft. We need 7 spots to do it. So and if there's trades that are done, that person will have to drop another player because if he has extra picks, so it's something I have to monitor myself um as the league commissioner. I don't it's a work, but I love it, because it's fun. In this particular league, we even do trades during the draft. Oh, look, I'll trade you my pick next year for this pick because the player they want is still there. So it's fun. It's challenging because there's different strategies to draft. You can either try to draft young. You want to always try to have a young team if you can. Maybe mixed in with some veterans. If you want to win now, maybe you tend to draft more veterans. So it has its varying strategies when you do dynasty leagues. So it's fun. It's a little bit more hardcore. There's even leagues that you have a salary on top of that. That's a little too much for me. That becomes a little bit like work. I still want to have fun doing this. So, but there's leagues like that even you have a salary attached to the players, and you sign them for a certain amount of years and all that. Um, but I stay away from that. Too much math for me. I want to have fun.
So for Dynasty League, so let's say that you were gonna start your first one this year. So that means nobody has a team.
Yeah.
Is it normally, 7 rounds, or let's say again, it's my very first one that I'm setting up. On average, how many rounds would it be, or does that again depend on the league and
So yeah, so that it'll yeah. When we did our startup, we start off with like 30 something players, so it was like 30 something rounds. So it was that now that becomes how many, whatever your roster size is what you want to do. So it might depend on when you do the draft as well. Like if you do the draft, let's say before the draft, you can do 2 drafts actually like the year that year you can do your startup. It's called like a startup draft. So you're starting the league from scratch. in my league, that particular league, like I said, it was a 2-day draft. We did like 20 rounds one day and like I don't know 17, 18 rounds the other day, and a lot of drafting that day, in those couple of days. And so that'll be dictated by whatever amount of players you keep. Obviously, the more players on your roster, the less players are tend to be on the waiver wire. So it becomes a little bit more challenging. You need to dig deep sometimes. Know like the fourth, fifth running back and receivers on teams. Even maybe some players that are on the practice squad. So you gotta do your homework there. That's why it's a little bit more hardcore. That you have to you know know what's going on. There's there's even leagues that you have a taxi squad, which is like players that you draft, but you don't tend to start them at all, and you kind of put them, you stash them there for the year, and then but you can't use them. So if you use them, then you lose a taxi spot because you can't fill it in later. So it's a little it's a little bit more challenging and strategy like that. So you just need some hardcore like the dynasty league that I'm in. With my friends, no one has left that league. We already think this is gonna be like our 10th year coming up, I believe, and not one person has left that league. Everyone's always comes back, and like I said, you try to. It becomes a strategy. Like if you see your team is starting to get old and whatever, then you start trading some pieces so that you can trade them for draft picks. Like there's a in this particular year, one of my league mates, he did like a couple of trades that he traded, some good players, but now it's gonna pay off for him because he's got 3 of the top 5 picks in the rookie draft that we're gonna have now. So he's gonna stack up on some stud players out there for sure. So it all becomes strategy, how you want to go.
So let's just circle back to the keeper league because maybe that's more or not more but less um less demanding of the one that of I guess the dynasty one that you've done with your friends for 10 years. Congratulations, by the way. Because
Thanks.
as a first time fantasy player, I don't know about having that many rounds. So let's just spend a
Yeah.
little bit of time before we wrap things up on the keepers. So let's take last year for example,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna be a little biased since I'm from Houston, but let's just say for whoever drafted C.J. Stroud last year, let's just use an example in a 14 round draft. Let's say I drafted him in round 10 last year.
Yeah.
If I want to keep him, does that gonna do I essentially not pick a player in the ninth round or the 10th round?
In the 10th round because this is the first year you're gonna keep them. So when the 10th round comes, we do our draft in person. So what I do, I put labels. Each player has a label, and I'll fill out the draft board. So like in your particular case, in the 10th round, I'll put C.J. Stroud. So when the draft comes, we'll skip you because you already have your pick technically for the 10th round. And then
Okay.
this year goes by and you want to keep him another year, then he moves up to the 9th round. Like I said, that's it. That's how I have it. Not people who just they'll keep these people forever. There's also keeper leagues that you can just keep them for like you can set a thing. Okay, you could only keep them a maximum of 3 years as well. So that way it's the keeper is always constantly changing. In that particular keeper league, I have a guy that he drafted Patrick Mahomes like in the as a second year, like in the 4th, 15th round, and he's still like a 9th rounder for him. So he keeps him every year. So no one's ever gonna draft Patrick Mahomes in that league.
All right. So that is probably easier for first timers to understand. So like Leonard said, is if you draft pretty much, I would say rookies because rookies may not always be drafted high depending on how they were actually drafted in the real NFL draft. So if you draft someone like C.J. Stroud or like Leonard said, Patrick Mahomes in the late rounds, and you can keep that player and have him on your team for multiple years. So, and like Leonard was saying, if you are accustomed to fantasy, then being more like a general manager is maybe something that you are interested in. Which, I mean, to me sounds fun because I think that would be cool, but I just don't know about the number of people on the rosters. So that being said, um, today we discussed league types. We went into a little bit about scoring, waiver wire. So I know there's a lot of information, but want to say thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments, whether it be on Spotify or on Podbean, which is the app that we're using, or if you want to reach out to Leonard, Leonard, I'll let you give out your information as you normally do.
Sure. Yeah, if you have any questions on fantasy or whatnot, you can reach me on X, at smooth1074. If you like the podcast, please give us a follow. Put any comments. It'll help us, get noticed and get the attention of other people. Spread the word around if you like what you're hearing. It'll be nice to tell other people that are interested in fantasy that we're trying to get you at least going in the right direction and stuff like that. Where can they follow you, Pablo?
So they can follow me on X as well. So my Twitter handle is at and then Arch, which is ARCH, and then Reaper, REAER. So that's my X handle. So if you want to follow either of us, and like Leonard said, if you do tune in, feel free to share this on social media platforms. I usually share this on my Facebook and on my Twitter feed. I know Leonard does as well. But again, thank you all for listening. And tune in next time.
Peace.